question for the day, the title of the show, which players have seen their stock rise the most this season? And hey, maybe one of those guys is Dylan Guenther, who only played in 66 games, but is still right on the cusp of being a 30-goal scorer. But there were a couple of other guys I wanted to focus on here. One, maybe a bit of an obvious one considering the heater he's currently on, but that's Nick Suzuki. This is a guy in Montreal who I think has kind of taken that step of like, okay, is he a true number one center, or is he going to be one of those guys that maybe fits in more as like a really good number two center? And I think what we've seen here, especially in the back half of the season, is Nick Suzuki, offensively, defensively, whatever way, he is a guy who is a legit bona fide 1A number one center.
Yeah, I agree with you too. And I think the fact of the matter is for Nick Suzuki, how he's identified himself on the other side of the puck. And again, I think that you talk about the relationship with Martin St. Louis and where he's at and being a true pro. It's hard to have success in this league over a long career. And Martin St. Louis knows the ins and out of doing that. And when you look at the East, look at the Barkovs, you look at the Matthews, guys know how to play on the other side of the puck. Nick Suzuki is that guy now. And it seems like every night over this run, he's on the score sheet. He's finding a way to impact games. He's playing valuable minutes as the captain, as the leader. And I think he's a big reason why we're even talking about Montreal being in this playoff position that they are in.
Yeah, the other guy I have here is Jesper Bratt, and there's an interesting comment in our YouTube right off the jump from J-Rock who answered the question with a guy like Jacob Slavin. And with Slavin, I think anyone who's kind of keeping an eye on the league knows how truly elite Jacob Slavin has been for the last number of years. With a guy like Jesper Bratt, and hey, credit to the New Jersey Devils who have locked him up to a long-term deal. He's making under $8 million through 2031, but he's always kind of been second fiddle in New Jersey, even third, right? It's like, okay, there's Jack Hughes, there's Nico Hischier. And this year, with Hughes missing a lot of time once again, you look at Bratt and it's like back-to-back 80-point seasons. This year, he's going to step into that 90-plus point range. And he's just a guy who I think gets forgotten about a little bit, and he produces a ton. You look at his last 4 years, 73, 73, 83, 88. I don't think this is a player who you can sit and look at anymore and go, well, he just benefits from playing with a Hischier or a Hughes, or it was just a good year or two and he'll plateau off. Like, he's continuing to take steps forward, and I think he might be taking the mantle of like the most underappreciated player in the league.
Yeah, again, I agree with you completely, Ty. I think the fact of the matter is when we think about the New Jersey Devils, you think about Hughes and Hischier and the different players that go with it, but he hasn't had that supporting cat necessarily during this run, right? He is a guy that is an independent thinker and he makes great plays out there. His creativity in the offensive zone is undeniable. And again, I think he's finding more of a well-rounded game. And I don't know if that is the fact of Sheldon Keefe or just general what Fitzgerald has built there, but he seems like a deeper player in meaning of like early in his career, I didn't like the way he played in the defensive zone. I spent a lot of time playing against him. He was always great offensively. He had that water bug mentality where you couldn't hit him. He was always creating. And now he's settled into where he needs to be. And again, I don't like the Devils coming into the playoff series. I think they're limping in when you talk about playoffs. But that being said, I think Jesper Bratt has done well. And that is a great signing now when we look at the numbers that he's putting up. And I don't see that stopping. I see him continually produce as the Devils get healthy moving forward.
Let's flip this conversation around now and talk a little bit about some guys who maybe saw their stock plummet over the last 82 games or over the last 8 months here. And I got a few, like Elias Pettersson is the really easy one. It's easy to throw shade on EP40. And listen, the Canucks have a big decision to make. We don't need to talk more about Pettersson. Maybe we'll get into the Canucks tomorrow. But a couple of other veterans here, one of them being Chris Kreider, who I saw Rangers fans before we even got to this topic. They're already trading him to Utah in our chat. They can't wait to get rid of Chris Kreider this summer. But the other guy I had on there that I kind of want to have a conversation about is Roman Josi, who had, again, some injury problems this year. It caused his numbers to plummet. And yes, he's 1 year removed from an 85-point season. He's 3 years removed now from his 96-point season. And he's 34. He's a truly elite player, and I get it. And maybe this is just a blip this year, and maybe Nashville just wasn't that good of a team, and I'm reading too much into one bad season. But sometimes I feel like we look at the Ovies and the Crosbys, and we go, look, every superstar player can play into their late 30s and continue to be the stars that they are. And I look at Josi at 34, and there's just a little part of me. It's not a big down, but it's just a little trend down. I'm going, has Nashville maybe already seen the best of Josi, and is he maybe not going to be a guy who can pull them out of this tough season?
Yeah, it might be the fact of the matter is, some guys age differently too, Ty. And I feel like this is something I dealt with when I retired, right? People would be like, well, why did you quit playing? I was 36 years old. And I feel like sometimes you look at players, I was barely good enough to be there when I was in my prime. You fight and you battle, and how hard it is to compete every single night. And people see Ovechkin and they see Crosby and they see these guys that are ageless wonders and Marc-Andre Fleury, where sometimes it has a different effect on people. But I think for Roman Josi, there's still value there. And I think, again, him being back to 100% and a little bit of health, and he's had a lot of hard miles on his body, right? And again, this is a team that traded Shea Weber away. So nothing is up for grabs here. You never know what could happen moving forward. But I think Roman Josi is a little bit of a step back, especially in the way that he plays, his skating, his mobility. It's going to slow down. Time, nobody beats time, no matter what. But I still think I look for a bounce back season from him. And yes, him being out, I like the fact that they just never brought him back, because I know he was close. I had a chance to talk to him when I was in Nashville on the Leafs morning take trip, is to see where he gets now with a little bit of an extended break, a little bit of a reset, just for your body, for your mind, coming back next season. But I don't want to sell that stock just yet, but I'm with you, though. Time catches up with everybody.
Yeah, and you look at that Nashville team and the ages of some of those guys. They're 4 highest paid forwards. Forsberg at 30, Stamkos 35, Marchessault 34, O'Reilly 34. Then you go to the blue line. It's Brady Shea at 31 and Roman Josi at 34. Like, it's not like these guys are sitting here still in the middle of their primes. They're kind of, to use a golf reference, heading towards, we'll call it the 14th or 15th hole here in their careers. And on that Nashville note, it actually does tie in nicely to our big segment. The Blue Paint for today, brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers. You can apply for a Charm Diamond Flexity card today and get approved for no interest financing on your purchase in minutes. For more information, go to charmdiamondcenters.com. All right, Huts, we're doing the same exercise, but on the goaltending front. And I guess it is a good transition to start in Nashville, where you have UC Saros as one of those guys who's maybe a little bit on the decline. And Huts, he hasn't even seen his $7.7 million extension kick in yet.
I know. It's a little worrisome for me. The fact of the matter is he is a backbone there, and you trade Askarov away, he becomes your guy, and you look at his save percentage at 895. It's disappointing for a guy who had a career 914 save percentage, and he's had a lot of wins, and it's been a little slow progress, right? It was a 906 last year, 919, 918, and he plays a ton of minutes. He's a valuable goalie. But that being said, he is undersized. So everything that you lose being a little bit smaller, you have to make up in speed, skill, edge work, and being perfect in all other facets. Where this year, I just felt like it was a big step down. Again, I think it's a product of the team, but I look for him to have a lot of pressure on him going into next season, because if this continues, there's going to be a dynamite that goes off in Nashville where they start moving pieces out, something that I don't really love to see, because I'm very fond of UC Saros and the Nashville Predators, Ty.
Speaking of big extensions, Jeremy Swayman, obviously it was a big story coming into the year. He missed a lot of training camp. When you look at Swayman, 26 years old, how much of this bad season do you think is maybe just bad luck? How much of it is, hey, he didn't start on time, losing training camp can really set a guy back? Like, what did you make of Swayman's step back this season?
I think it's a bit of everything, Ty. I look at Linus Ullmark getting moved out and being anointed to having the keys to the castle. And I've been in that situation before where someone gets hurt or you become the guy. Everything changes, because now all of a sudden, instead of playing 2 games a week, you're playing 3 or 4, and the wear and tear that goes on in the season. I think he got behind the 8 ball, truthfully, for me, with the whole training count and holdout situation. So again, I think the Bruins were due for a little self-destruct, and I still find it weird looking at the standings and seeing the Bruins at the bottom of the Eastern Conference standings. It just seems weird to me. But that being said, Swayman needs to be better, right? Again, an 895 save percentage. And this is a guy who over his career has been rock solid, right? We look at his record and what he's done for this team, even his playoff success. He needs to be a backbone. When you're paid that kind of money as a goaltender, you need to be a difference maker continually every single night. And he wasn't this year at all. So I look for him stock to go down this summer. But again, there's a lot of pressure because he's still got 7 years left on that big deal.
So both him and Saros, 7 years remaining, and not exactly a linear comparison here, because Saros is 29 and Swayman is currently 26. But is there one of those two you think has a better shot at bouncing back next year?
For me, I think it's Swayman, truthfully. I think he's a higher-end goalie. Again, I just worry about Saros' size and the way that they defend on like an aging Nashville team when you talk about those guys and their picks, because he just has to move so much more to be perfect, right? I know sometimes size isn't necessarily an advantage, but when you're smaller, you need to do so much more work to be perfect. And again, he's played a ton of minutes over his career, right? Again, I think they need to go and find someone that can help him and complement him, where they can get maybe a 1A, 1B situation to protect Saros a little bit more.
All right, let's end this segment on a positive note here. Let's give some goalies some love. And Darcy Kemper, 34 years old. He had a really bad year in Washington. They move him in the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade, and all of a sudden he's bounced back. He's found the fountain of youth back where he started his career with the LA Kings Huts. Darcy Kemper's bounce back. What's impressed you the most about it?
I think just his poise, right? There's a lot that goes on with a goalie when, especially when you get older and you have a family and you have kids and you have to move across the country. And he had a stint with LA before where he's done well. There's familiarity there. But that being said, he was kind of written off last year. It got to the point where he was a liability being played. Like Charlie Lindgren did such a great job. And again, I was going to have Logan Thompson on here, but he's already had his flowers and he's got his contract. For Darcy Kemper, he's at a point in his career. If he has another bad year, this could be the end of it. This could be the end of it. You're on the outside looking in. And to have a .922 save percentage and to have 28-11 record, the record he has at home, he's been a staple for this LA Kings team. And I think it's been important to say that he's been one of the biggest difference makers for this team. And the fact that he's re-evolved his game, he doesn't wow you by any means. But the mental capacity to play in big moments and be there still for Darcy Kemper, it's been very impressive for me to watch this year, Ty.
And last one, you see him on the screen right there, Anthony Stolarz. And listen, he's appeared in, I think it's close to 40 games now, or it's right just over 30. But this is a guy who'd never really taken the reins as a starter in his career. The Leafs have some faith in him. They give him a pretty decent contract, and he delivers, putting up some great numbers. Is this a good year, or do you think Stolarz has, let's call it, long-term starter potential?
I do believe this is long-term for Stolarz, right? My worry about him is I don't think he ever becomes that 55, 60 game guy consistently, but he can be a difference maker. His size and poise, we saw it last night against Tampa Bay. He was so good. You look at that overtime, he made a few big saves. His reads are well. And what I really like about Anthony Stolarz is we talk about this a lot is he communicates well with his teammates. He has that maturity. And I feel like he's going to take on this challenge because when we look at the East, there's going to be some big head-to-head matchups for him, right? We talk about Linus Ullmark possibly in the first round. And then from there, you're going to have Vasilevsky and Bobrovsky. So last night, just even getting that win and, kind of extending your leash in the sense of your confidence and where you're at, helping this team get to the top of the standings is so important, especially for a guy that was a career backup at this point. He's really flourished in a market where there is a lot of pressure, but I think he's ready to handle it. And it's been a great signing so far for the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Sticking with the sort of stock market theme here, we'll call this question the penny stocks. A few guys heading into the summer who they do not have a ton of value and they're going to be available, whether it's through a buyout or whatever. You have a guy like Philip Grubauer in Seattle, who again, expectation is they probably buy him out. Tristan Jarry, same boat in Pittsburgh. Maybe even a few options. We can throw Alexander Georgiev pending UFA into this mix. Peter Mrazek has had a really tough year in Detroit. Odds are they might buy him out or be willing to keep some money to move off from him in the summer. Out of those players, or out of those goalies, do you think there's one that could have a bounce back next season?
For me, this is an easy one. I think a few of those guys I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole, but it's Tristan Jarry. I think if Tristan Jarry gets bought out and he's a decent buy, I feel like he has a lot to prove. And if you look at his numbers, he's had some bad seasons as of late, but there's still a lot of value there. He's still a younger guy. So he is the guy for me that I think can take a big step forward. And during this last little run with Pittsburgh, he's played well at times, right? I think just a change of scenery will be so important for him. And I've seen that a lot where Ty, a goalie gets drafted, he gets groomed, he becomes the next big thing in that market. It gets tricky. So I think a change of scenery for Tristan Jarry would do everybody well in this setting.
Yeah, and maybe a bit of like a set on expectations too, right? Like if he goes somewhere and signs for, and I don't maybe know the value here, but it's $1.5 million and he's the 1B or the backup to a good young goalie. Like I think about him and listen, he spent a lot of time in Alberta in his junior hockey days, but like what if you threw him behind Dustin Wolf next season in Calgary and you were like, hey, you know what? We know we can lean to you every, few weeks or every week for a spot start, but your new job, your new chapter in your career is to be a good mentor for Dustin Wolf.
Yeah, and I think there's value there, right? It depends on his character outside the room because that is something that's so important too. And again, I think something in extended my career is like, we'd rather have the devil, right? Like, let's get Carter because we know that what he handles off the rink is so important and never undermining the success of the younger guy. But that being said, at the end of the day, the number one thing is competing and playing well in the net. And I think he brings value there. And again, if something was to happen or Dustin Wolf has a tough stretch or an injury, he can carry the mail and keep you in that playoff hunt. And I think that adds so much value to Tristan Jarry when I look at him moving forward into next season.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Seravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.